We have a great panel prepared for you guys today of 4 amazing women artists, photographers, 3 of whom spoke on our main stage. And we're also joined by Maria Perez, who is a photographer, videographer, but she also is one of our own here at B&H. So she works in our social media department, and we're very happy to have her here on board with us here today. And I want to start off by allowing each one of our panelists to do a brief introduction, although I know some of you have already heard them speak, but we're going to start with Michele and then go to Susan, Maria, and then Jessica. So each one of you guys give a short intro for those people that may have missed your presentation, for those who don't know you, and then we'll start it off with some questions.
Thanks, Madeline. I'm Michele Celentano. I'm based in Phoenix, Arizona, originally from New York. I'm a Canon explorer of light, and my primary genre today is family portraits, but I've been in photography for more than 30 years and started as a wedding photographer and moved through most of the genres. So thank you for having me.
I'm Susan Magnano. I've been a professional photographer for over 20 years, and I started out as a photojournalist, made my way into weddings and portraits, and I teach photography workshops all over the world where we not only chase the best light during the day, but we also create amazing light at night, which brings me to my true passion, which is night photography. So I've combined my love for night photography and my passion for portraiture by using light painting. So I've created a series called Luminescent Portrait Series. And I like to share that with everybody and get everyone out there in the dark, creating some really unique and amazing portraits.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Maria. You may have seen me in some of the YouTube videos on our B&H YouTube channel, but I am a part of the social media team here at B&H. I shoot a lot of our videos. I'm in a lot of our videos. I get to meet a lot of the amazing photographers, some of them that are here on this panel. And I also shoot portraits on the side on my own time. So I kind of live and breathe photo.
And hello, I'm Jessica Hines, and I'm an artist, photographer. Been doing it all my life. Since I was 7, probably. And I have a new book out that is called My Brother's War, and I spoke about that yesterday. I began as a street photographer, actually, and then moved to a rural area at the edge of a wetland. And so my work, I think it started to turn more inward, and I make videos of strange goings on out in the wetland at night. And I also do other straight photography, going out. And I would like to be a comedian if I had the opportunity. And I would like to time travel if that were also possible. So that's who I am, maybe.
I would join you with that. That sounds great.
I think I would too.
Come along. I'm ready. Blast off.
Awesome. Well, we'll start with Michele, and I want to hear a little bit more about what got you into photography, maybe what your first camera was, how you started out. I know it was some of you guys mentioned it in the intro, but if you could just elaborate a little bit on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I took my first photography class in junior high school. And then in high school, took some more photography classes, really just loved it. I was not a good student. I was always daydreaming out the window, what's going on in the rest of the world. In art class, I thought, why am I sitting in art class when I could be at a museum looking at art live? I just never really liked being in the classroom and being constricted to a desk. So in high school, I took photography again. I loved it, but I started college for psychology and sociology and was quickly bored and asked my parents if I could go to school for photography. This is in 1990. And my mother said to me, this better not be an expensive hobby. How are you going to make a living? And 30 some odd years later, I still call and say, I'm making a living. Anyway, and so I went to school for photography in New York City, the Center for Media Arts. I studied fashion and commercial photography. And then I worked on cruise ships as a cruise ship photographer, but I really did love weddings. And so I started assisting and working for wedding photographers in my area, and then was hired to be a second shooter and then primary shooter. And then again, I didn't like being told what to do. So I started my own business and I have been working for myself ever since. But I just really liked the fact that I could be on the move all the time. I didn't have to be restricted to doing the same thing over and over every day. That working with people was really, I loved working with people. I loved the chaos and the craziness of New York City weddings and the ethnic families and all of it. And as I've grown older, my photography has kind of morphed with where I am in life. So when I was younger, weddings were, the thing. And then having my daughter, then babies and children. And now really it's families. And I love high school seniors as well. So that's where I come from. That's where I started, in high school.
Awesome. Me too. So I took my first black and white film photography course in high school as well and fell in love with it. So I was like using my dad's Canon AE1 was my favorite camera. It was actually the only camera I had, was my favorite, but that was my camera. I had taken it from him and he never saw it again. And it wasn't really until I got injured playing soccer that I had the time to really think, is this what I want to do? I was sitting on the sidelines most of the games, watching everyone play, and I kept seeing this photographer running back and forth. And I thought, well, if I can't be in the action, I want to be capturing the action. So at the end of one of my soccer games, I went over to him and I said, how do I get to do what you do? Because it looks like it's a lot of fun. And his name was Peter Carr. He changed my life. He gave me a card for the local newspaper that he worked for, and I started an internship next semester. And I loved it. I did everything from going out with the reporter and going out with the photographer, and I'd be shooting my own film during these days. And we'd come back to the office and we'd develop it and look at the Lightroom table, the little light table, and pick out our pictures. And to my surprise, they would print my pictures in the newspaper. And from that moment on, I realized the power of photography and how I was able to share my experiences that I had captured with my pictures and also tell a story through photography. And in that moment, I knew this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
That's really cool. Mine kind of did, I guess, kind of start with sports as well. I originally wanted to be in high school. I took a lot of TV classes, and I originally wanted to direct live football games. I always thought it was like fascinating that football games and live sports games had like 10 different cameras on the field. And I always thought it would be just so amazing if I could be the one that ran all those cameras. And then so I went to school, I went to film school, and then eventually I started working in news. And now I like think back, I used to always be that person who had like the old Canon PowerShot cameras who would always like take them to parties and take pictures of everybody. And it was always me who like, I would get home and immediately have to upload the pictures and put them in an album on Facebook. And everybody was always waiting for those photos to come up. So I like think back and I'm like, I think that's kind of how I like knew that I really wanted to be into photography and kind of taking pictures of people. So eventually I kind of moved out of news and worked into more of like a digital form like YouTube and creating more interview style, and got to know a camera much better that way. And then I eventually kind of went into more the portrait style. I still work for B&H and I do the interviews and all that, but I also do shoot photography on the side, and I do portraits, and I'm always doing family portraits, just kind of solo portraits and maternity. And I've just come to love just kind of making people shine. And it's been like one of my favorite things to do. I never get sick of it, of seeing people smile and getting their best sides and like seeing them be like, oh my God, how did you get that side of me? I've never seen that. It's kind of been such a cool thing. So it's been like a whirlwind of a path, but I think I've really figured it out.
Well, I can really relate to what all of you are saying too. In my case, I was really inspired by my father, who was an artist, and he liked to write poetry and play the piano, but he also liked to take photographs. But most of the photographs that he took were just family kinds of pictures. And so I was just amazed at that. I would see these pictures and I thought, that camera, I can still see that camera. And it was like a little magic box. That's the way I saw it. And I thought, ooh, I wasn't allowed to touch it, I don't think, in the beginning. But I would just wait. I couldn't wait to see, the pictures as I got a little older and recognized what was happening with this magic box, that the little square moments of life were frozen on this paper. And I couldn't wait to see the film. You had to wait a week or so to get the film developed back in those days. So I also was introduced to darkroom photography in high school. I was really lucky. I got to go to a special afternoon arts classes that had a darkroom. And so I really got my start there. Went to college and knew that my passion was photography. Oh, I left out the part. When I was in 8th grade, my next door neighbor bought a camera for me. It was my first 35 millimeter camera. And they knew how much I love photography. And they're so sweet. I can still thank them to this day. But that allowed me to, have film, and that I could, more seriously pursue this. So, but I did study it in undergrad and also in graduate school. And I also had a passion for film history, cinema. So that's where I guess it all began.
Great. So I know, Susan, you mentioned that you had a mentor, and Jessica, you mentioned that your father was of great influence to you. But can you guys talk about whose work influenced you? Were there any women specifically that influenced your path and the work that they make?
For me, 30 some odd years ago, there were not a lot of women in photography. It was, now it's, 54, 60%, somewhere in there, women. But when I got started, it was extremely male dominated. And there were only a few women in the organization that I became a member of. But I remember Joyce Tennyson being a huge inspiration at that time. She was doing remarkable work. But also for me at the time, I was in the wedding world. And so it was the wedding photographers that really inspired me, and that I learned from people like Monty Zucker and Hanson Fong. And again, there was not a lot of female wedding photographers at that time. So it was hard to have a female mentor at the time. It's much easier now. Now I look at people like Loretta Hudson and fashion photography, and women like that are doing just incredible work. So, but yeah, it was hard to find a female role model 32 years ago.
I had a similar thing happen for me too, but I started off again doing weddings, and I was pretty lucky. I had some local wedding photographers, Diana Van Campen and Dora, I'm forgetting her name, and Corinne. These were like my women, my sisterhood of women photographers, who were all kind of these local New York photographers who'd hire me to be their second shooter. And I felt like thanks to them, I learned so much. They like entrusted me on these jobs. And I feel like that's like the best way to get into wedding photography, or actually photography in general, is just working under people whose work you admire. And I was lucky to befriend them. And then they just brought me on all these events, and it really helped me feel confident about shooting my own weddings. And I'm sure that's how it was for you too, Michele. Once you did enough second shooting, you were like, all right, I got this. And I feel like that was like the big learning curve for me, was raising the confidence level. And I was so lucky to meet these wonderfully talented women who trusted me to do that. In my later life, once I've still do weddings, but in doing light painting, Eric Perez and Kim Henry were my main role models in making me kind of jump ship and try something different. They inspired me to kind of look into the darkness and think creatively. What they dared me to like dream into the darkness. And what they do, if you don't know Eric Perez and Kim Henry, is they're the founders of the Tube Tribe. And if you guys watched my presentation, I did a lot of work with a hollow T8 tube, which is basically a light tube that you would use to protect your office lights. And you put a flashlight in it, and you could put some gels, and it becomes this amazing light painting tube. And Eric Perez and Kim started this tube community. They call it the Tube Tribe. And every day he would post not every day, every so often he would post videos. He called them tube stories about their experiences. And for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to create work like this. And you guys, if you've ever seen a picture of somebody, a beautiful model, and Kim's a dancer, a beautiful dancer on a hill with a circle of light around her, it was either taken by Eric or inspired by Eric. So it's really, really powerful images, and he's changed the way people light paint. But what really, really inspired me was one time I was watching him do an interview, and someone said, well, you're giving away all your secrets in these tube stories that you post, sharing all your information, everything. Aren't you afraid that someone's going to steal this information and get better than you? And I don't know exactly what he said. So it's something to the effect of, no, when someone else learns, it raises everybody up, and then I'll learn from them, and together we'll all become better. And for me, that was so powerful. And I still use that motto in my teaching today. Like, I want everyone to learn, because if they get better, then I'll get better. Like, I'll learn something from them that I never even thought of, or it happens to me all the time when I'm teaching, just like a different view, a different perspective. And it really empowered me, because that's how also the light painting community is. It's a wealth of knowledge of people experimenting and trying different things, and it's inclusive. It's everyone's invited to join the party and learn and share what they learned, and I take that with me, and I feel like I appreciate all the women photographers who helped me do weddings, and I also appreciate Eric and Kim, who taught me to dream a little bit differently and start a different path.
That's awesome. Well, so surprisingly, like, I also really didn't have like any women photographers. I am a little younger, and women like influences and mentors, because it really is still pretty male dominated. Like when I was in college and interning and everything, every one of my bosses and people that I worked for, they were all men. I was lucky that I had a couple people that really, felt that they believed in me, would help me, put in a good word for the next thing. There were a couple directors that really felt that I was a great intern and would push me forward. But, it is surprising how really to this day, I haven't really had like a female mentor, which I feel like pushes me to really kind of do things like this, like a women's panel, and really kind of put myself out there to be there for people that I didn't really have that opportunity. But it's kind of amazing, like working for B&H, and I have the luxury of getting to meet so many different photographers like you guys. Like even I've been with B&H for 3 years, and in these last 3 years, like I've met so many incredible women and people that I didn't even know existed are shooting such like sports photography. Like, there are people like Jean Fruth, who's 5'1", running with a 600 millimeter lens up and down the field of a football field when there's these like monstrous men right next to her. It's like, to me, so incredible. So, I think like in the last 3 years, I've got to meet so many awesome women. And I think that's where really like a lot of my influence, especially in photography, has come, is just like meeting so many different people. If you look at our like tips channel, like our tips playlist on our B&H YouTube channel, you will see so many different women photographers shooting the most amazing things. And that's like, to me, like where I've gotten my influence from women.
Great. Well, I'm probably older than everyone in the world. But wow, when I was a kid, back in the 1800s, there really weren't a lot of female role models for me. We didn't have internet. The only thing you really had was television and your neighbors or the people you went to school with or something. You just didn't. I didn't have that kind of introduction to strong women, but I feel I was just born that way. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to do all the things that I was seeing on television that boys were doing and men were doing. And it all looked like so much more fun than being, in the kitchen cooking or wearing an apron or something like that. That's not for me. I'm definitely going for some of these fun things here. So when, I really didn't have a mentor. My father was someone I looked up to in that way. But I also, if you didn't see my presentation, I lived in a lot of foster homes and things when I was growing up. So I wasn't in contact with him as often as I would have liked. But he sort of got the ball rolling, put me in a little boat, and I was sort of pushed off the shore. And I had that, I took that with me. And when I got to college, here's where I think things are very different now compared to what it was like when I was in school. Do you know that in my art history class, we did not see any women photographers? The only women I remember in art history were just a handful, basically Mary Cassatt, and if they took pictures of children and babies or something, then they were in the art history. But unless they did that, they tended not to be. So I really didn't see role models like I would have liked. But I did discover a lot of photographers and artists whose work I really was affected by. And so I discovered Diane Arbus initially too in college. My job in college, one of them was to file the slides of my professors. And I would sit in this room by myself and put away all these images, and I had to look at the images. And so I learned a lot, in the process. But I just saw this Diane Arbus book. Oh my goodness, I've never seen anything like this in my life. And I was floored. And I think maybe, looking back, I have always felt like an outsider, and somehow her work spoke to me then. But there's also Alfred Hitchcock films. I started writing things down. There were other women too. Maya Deren, the filmmaker, Dwayne Michaels, I adore. And I was so happy that he spoke yesterday. It's really great. If you didn't see him, definitely check him out. Sophie Kao. Now I have loved her, but I also have been influenced by the sciences, and Richard Feynman, for example, is a great hero of mine, as is Lawrence Krauss and Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I love poetry. I love Mary Oliver. I think I relate to her poetry because of the fact that I live in the woods, basically, next to a wetland, and she wrote about the natural world. So yeah, these and comedians also. I think they're all artists, right? They're picking up on rumblings and I think of artists too as the antenna. We're picking up the rumblings that maybe other people feel but haven't been able to put together exactly to express it. And so those have been people who influenced me.
Great. We're going to go right into the loaded questions now. What do you think? I know there's probably many challenges for all of you, but what do you think is the biggest challenge that you face currently as a woman working in the industry? And if you could provide an example, that would be great.
Currently, I think it's historically, but then currently, I think for a lot of young women who have families, is balancing business and family, balancing growing a business, being a mom, car pickups, school, PTA, sports, all of those things. Traditionally, men were never expected to balance work and career and family where women are. And so I still think that is probably one of the biggest challenges. I also think that isolation is a challenge for women when you are in your own business and you don't have an office to go to or people around you to talk to or bounce ideas off of all the time. You can kind of feel like you're living a little bit in a silo and you're missing that interaction of like, what do you think of this idea? And do you think this will work? And just having that community around you when you have, kind of corporate job or, you're out in the world or even in retail, you're meeting and talking to more people every day. And you have more of a community where we see each other at conventions or at online, things like this. It used to be we'd go to a meeting once a month and all the photographers would get together, and we don't have as much as that. So I think balancing life and work and a little bit of isolation in growing your own business can be definitely challenging.
I think you raised a lot of great points, Michelle. I totally agree with you. I'm going to take a little bit different angle. For me, my biggest challenge that I face is the danger of going into the dark. I do night photography, and that's like part of my requirement. Like, you're going to go into dark places, and with darkness becomes the unknown. You never know what's going to be there. And, as a photographer and as a woman, you kind of want to take the most precautions as you can. You can scout the location during the day. You can, bring some mace with you. Because if I go out in New York City, I kind of want to have something protecting me. So I'll typically carry like a small thing of mace. And if I'm going out into the backcountry of Utah, I'll bring a GPS system if I lose service. But I don't like let this challenge scare me from what I want to do. Like, my passion overcomes my uncomfortability of going into places that may hold some danger, because I know that the reward will be greater. Like, I would be sitting in my New York City apartment all the time. I'd be afraid to leave the door, and that's not really part of who I am. So my passion overrides all my fears, and just have to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, and kind of to Michelle's point, it's kind of interesting, like where I'm starting to come to that type of realization. Like, I'm recently married, and it's one of those things that I'm thinking about that men never have to think about. Like, I have to think about a timeline of, do I want to start a family? Like, do I need to like get to this point in my career before I can do that? And it's a lot of things that you do have to think about that a lot of people don't have to, which kind of, sometimes is a bummer, where you have to like kind of put the balance and figure out, and you feel like you need to rush to success rather than, like getting to that point when, whenever it's your right to get there. But it is kind of interesting. I'm definitely at that point thinking about those things, and it's interesting. But also, for me, things that I've kind of dealt with, or things that I even continue to deal with, is kind of getting to a room and having to be taken seriously, or knowing that you're in charge, and that person understanding that you're in charge. I am, I'm 5'1", and I look a lot younger than I actually am. And even when I first started out, and especially when I used to work in sports, like, I've had people say like, oh, do you even know what this is? Like, in talking about baseball, I'm like, you've never spoken to me. Why wouldn't you know that I did or didn't? So it's just kind of like that assumption that you don't know what you're talking about just because you're this young, tiny woman. And, so I definitely have come to learn how to, deal with that and figure out how to, own a room, because I have to like immediately and be taken seriously off the bat, because now, I've dealt with that. So those are definitely the type of challenges, and that I think I've kind of figured out how to deal with it. But it's just kind of being taken seriously off the bat, rather than having to, spend a whole day with somebody and then somebody say, oh, you do know what you're talking about, which I'm sure other men, nobody necessarily assumes that the second they walk through the door that they don't know what they're talking about. If anything, you assume that they know what they're talking about because they enter a room kind of owning it. So that's definitely one of the things I've dealt with.
Yeah, I can relate to all of you again. It's the appearance that bothers me, and appearances are deceptive. Can't believe appearances, just about anything. And I really resent that, actually, that I have to own the room, like you just said, and be afraid at night, like you said, Susan, when I'm out photographing. I think that appearance, I wish I could, become invisible or something. I would prefer, for example, that my classes be just simply listed, because I'm teaching asynchronously and I'm not seen. And I like not being seen, because I think, just imagine me however you want, male, female, just put my initial, kind of like J.K. Rowling, who wrote all those wonderful books. And she was smart. She chose initials for her first name because she has said that her work would not be read by a lot of people if they thought the author was a woman. So this is still with us. This prejudice is still very much with us, and I'm aware of it. I don't often know, none of us, know sometimes when we are being discriminated against. So we can't know that always, right? See, this is what helps keep it going, is that sometimes there's not exact proof of why something happened the way it did. I had to do some dangerous work recently over the last year, and it was so scary that I decided, after being approached a couple of times on a really scary road, I call it Murder Alley, actually. I'm not going to go back, but I dressed as a man, and I found a hard hat that I had stashed away someplace. So I literally put on a hard hat and baggy, clothes, and I pretended to be talking on the phone. I had a pen and paper and I pretended to be writing things as cars would pass, and I would just turn my face so that I had the illusion of a male figure. And then I had to like dash up the side of some place to like, get my pictures that I needed. But yeah, and I also have another memory of being out at night doing night photography. I love that. And here's a tip that's really pretty cool. I did this one time. Someone was harassing us, and I happened to have my flash with me. You can really blind someone coming at you with a flash. Bam, turn that flash on, put it on make sure it's on and have a button ready. And there's no poison, no poison gas or, anything you have to worry about blowing back on yourself, but they can't see you for a minute. Oh, well, that was in Rear Window. The movie, the Hitchcock movie that I'm such a fan of too. But yeah, and I've also had issues when I was younger, working in college, having to have off the wall jobs, waiting tables and things. And my idea was, okay, if I want to make the most money, then I should go to the nicest restaurant and apply for a job there because you'll make the biggest tips. And they flat out told me that they don't hire women, that my appearance would be denigrating to their atmosphere. So I never forget these things, that was pretty rough. And I learned at a young age that the world is not fair, but I'm going to do everything I can to make things right. And I'm glad to be on the panel to air some of this and talk about it. I think it's really good that we all do this. Thank you all for sharing your experiences. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, what an amazing panel so far, right? I mean, we've gone pretty deep already. This is awesome. To piggyback sort of on that last question, being too emotional is often seen as unprofessional, although it is one of the principal foundations of being an artist. What role does emotion play in your professional career, and how do you keep it balanced with your professionalism?
I think emotion is really important for me. I mean, I used to cry at every wedding ceremony. Like I would get weepy eyed. I felt a connection to the couple. And even if I was fighting with my husband at the time, I would leave the house and there was a renewed sense of love and hope just being at a wedding. And even now, I've watched children grow up because I've been photographing them since they're newborns. And I'll photograph a high school senior and I will sometimes tear up in the middle of their session. Like I will say, I have watched you grow up. Like this is important. And I also think emotion plays a really important role because we are emotionally connected to our images. And in a way, we want our clients to be emotionally connected to our images because then they buy them. And let's face it, I'm in the business of photography. I want to sell my work to earn a living to support my life. And I can tell a story that my grandparents raised me and I have no portraits with them. And so if I have an opportunity to get a grandparent as part of a portrait session, I'm going to emotionally talk about how that's something that's really missing in my life. And it's not something that if you have the opportunity to do that, you shouldn't miss it. Like you should take this opportunity to be photographed with your grandparents, your parents, elderly people, multiple generations, that someday it's going to mean more to you than you could possibly imagine. And, I kind of use emotion. Like I say to people, someday when your children have grandchildren of their own and you're no longer here, they're going to be looking at these portraits with you, and it's going to mean everything to them. When mom is like, oh, I don't want to be photographed. I don't like the way I look. I still haven't lost the baby weight, this, that, and the other thing. I use emotion and I say, have you ever looked at a portrait of someone you really love and thought, they should have waited till they lost some weight to have that picture taken? No one has ever said that. And so I think emotion is part of our work. And I also think it's a really great sales tool, honestly. So, I think in the art industry and what we do, emotion is an advantage to us, not a disadvantage.
I agree completely. I feel like emotions are part of being a human being. So like we all are emotional beings, men, women, it doesn't matter. But women have the freedom to be more in touch with their emotions. So what makes photos more powerful? Emotional photos, photos that create something that make you feel something. And I think that's kind of a blessing that we have as women, that we are able to express our emotions more freely, and also maybe that helps us capture more emotions in our pictures. Like you were saying, Michelle, I feel like that is true. So regardless of gender, if we all wear our heart, shoot from our heart, I think we'll create more powerful images, and not live in such a world that emotions are unprofessional. Let's just like free our hearts and do that.
Yeah, emotion is my biggest tool that I use. I do a lot of interviews, and it's kind of funny. Like it's almost every time I interview a man, at the end, they're like, "Oh, you were so easy to talk to. That was such an easy interview," because I gave them the freedom to get emotional and like maybe talk about family and talk about their mother without being judged and such. So I love to create those types of connections and get super emotional with a lot of my subjects. And it is funny that I am able to help men get emotional because they always feel like uptight and shouldn't be able to. So it's my biggest tool.
And for me, I think I'm very emotional and on the inside. And I think maybe in the professional world, when I go out, I have to keep a lid on that because I'm very emotional. So I put on my poker face sometimes. You have to be an actor, which I've done when I had to. But I think that the combination of heart and mind are the things that produce the best work. It has the potential to produce the best work. I think we need both of those. But without the emotion, wow, what do you have? Imagine music, for example. If you went to a concert and the musicians were just there to make some money, and they really didn't care about the music, you could tell. You know what I'm saying? When you've gone to think of your favorite musicians, and if you've seen them, even if you've just seen them, on the screen, they feel it. And so it's, you all know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
So outside of emotion, let's say, what are some of the ways that being a woman in the industry has benefited your career? Sorry, we've got some loaded questions here, but they're good. This is really good stuff. So,
I think it helps. Being on the Canon team and being an explorer of light. When I came into the program 18 years ago, there were maybe 3 women, and I'm very good at what I do and my style of work. But I think at that time, being that there weren't a lot of female presenters and women on the stage at that time, that actually helped me because I was young, I was a woman, I was energetic, I could hold a crowd, but, they were like, we need more women. So, I think that totally helped me. But I think it helps me now. It helped me as a wedding photographer. It helped me, connect to the brides and to the mothers of the bride. It helped me with new mothers, because I was a mom and I could put them at ease. Working with high school girls. I think as a woman, it's easier for us to touch our models without it being creepy. I can jump in and fix a hair on a high school senior girl, and that won't be seen as odd. I'm kind of like have that motherliness about me. I'm less threatening than maybe men would be. I can move an arm or a shoulder, way more easily. And like I said, less, not that all men are creepy, they're not, but it could be perceived that way. And, just dealing with moms. My main client is moms, and we can totally create a connection. We can talk about our kids and we can talk about our experiences, and we can talk about getting older and our babies going to toddlers and toddlers to middle schoolers and then high schoolers, and then our babies are off to college. And, so there you can, I think women create connections more easily and create relationships more easily than men do. So I think that is definitely an advantage.
Yeah, I think all those are really solid points. Basically, what I was going to say too, Michelle, really, really on point with just how, as a woman, we can relate to moms, brides, teenage girls. I think there's a better, easier connection. Also, being a woman is benefiting me right now because I'm on this women's panel. So thank you guys for having me. But I agree that being a woman, you're easier to relate to other women, to welcome and invite people. It's not as threatening. So I would just kind of agree with the same lines that Michelle said.
Yeah, same. I would basically agree with those 2 points. Basically, people feel safer with me. So like, it's just interesting. I was just doing a maternity shoot last weekend, and I even thought to myself, like, I'm at this woman's house with my like whole backdrop and everything, and with her 2 young daughters, and I'm like, this would be so weird if I was a guy. And it's not to say that they can't do it, but it is just kind of like a fact. Obviously, this mom and the 2 young daughters are going to feel safe with me, just to kind of, sit any way they want to sit, because it's fine. They don't have to feel like any sort of uptightness at all. And then also it is true, like even to this day, like a lot of things where you are kind of the only woman, and with B&H, we are kind of making a lot of initiatives of trying to include more women, do a lot more women initiatives. And to my benefit, I have become like one of those like women who kind of jumps in a lot of the things that B&H does. And it's, it is benefiting my career in terms of kind of being the face for a lot of stuff. So while, yeah, obviously we want a lot more women, but yeah, personally right now, it is kind of great that we are pushing those types of initiatives.
And I have had experiences where I think it definitely benefited me too. And in the case once being in the Middle East, I really wanted to photograph in a Bedouin camp. Actually, I just wanted to go there. I learned that they didn't want to be photographed, but I was let out of a car and told that it would be wise if I went alone there with my cameras, or if I were able to take any photos, because I was seen as less threatening. So I think people will misinterpret the appearance to mean that the person might not be very good, or if not that, they just feel less threatened. I know of photojournalists who do war photography, and they've said that they're able to take, one of them took wedding pictures actually, and she would never have been able to have done that it's Lindsay Adario, without being able to, without being a woman, to be able to go in and make those pictures. So yeah, might as well use those advantages. Absolutely.
Great. I've been on the marketing team for about 7 years now, and it hasn't really happened to me recently, but when I first started traveling for B&H, I would often be out at these shows, trade shows, whatever, and men would not want to talk to me because they didn't think that I knew any technical information about photography. I would have people wait in line to speak with my male colleague when I had no line in front of me. So these are some of the things that I've experienced. And Maria, I know you mentioned that you've had similar experiences. How do you guys keep up with the technical world? Why do you think that we don't see as many women giving us the technical information as it pertains to photography?
I think it's because we do tap more into the emotion. We know the technical, we just don't feel that we rely on the technical. It's part of it. I mean, there's sometimes you're talking to male photographers and that's all they want to talk about is the technical, not how do you get the expression? How do you pose this family together and make them look like they're, having the best time of their life? Sometimes I think just because we don't always talk about the technical stuff, and, all of the women here, Maria, you come from film too, don't you?
I've shot film, but
yeah, I think when you have had to shoot film and be in a dark room and, know the technical, like you can't get around the technical when you are shooting film. And so we learn the technical early, and yes, it translates and technology changes and the digital world has changed. And, I mean, I used to retouch on negatives with, ink on negatives, and now we can do it on a computer. It's not that we don't know the technical, we're not capable of it, but it's not the forefront for us. Like, you could be the best technical photographer and have no emotion behind it and not get really good images, and yet you could be so connected to your subjects and so in the moment that maybe it's not technically perfect, but it's one of the best images ever created. So, and I do think, especially like Maria was saying, I'm a 4'11" woman. I'm teeny tiny. I'm child size. Like, so I think that's also why I can create connections with children, because I'm about their size. And so while I get a connection with young children because I'm not intimidating, when men look at me, they also see childlike, and they don't always take me seriously because I have a childlike appearance. That's why I went gray, just to establish myself as a real old woman. Just kidding. But you know what? That's an advantage. When you are considered the underdog, you have all the advantages because you can surprise people. And when you're underestimated, it's almost a good thing.
True. And I think us short girls need to hang out together.
Yeah.
There's power in shortness.
Dynamite, small packages.
Exactly. I think this was a really interesting question. It made me think hard about, even what I watch on YouTube. I was thinking, that's true, actually. Most of the tutorials I watch on any gear is made by a man. I couldn't really even pinpoint, except for the videos Maria makes. I honestly can't really picture many ones made by a woman. So I was like, damn, I need to get on that. But I think it's easier to understand the technical process than to create something powerful with it. So I feel like as women, we dive deeper into the creative side because we know it's going to create the more powerful shot. We think about the angles, the gesture, the expression. And I think that outweighs the importance of, did I pick the right f-stop, or am I shooting with the newest gear with the latest blah, blah, blah. I feel like women, we kind of make do with whatever we have, and we learn how to use it, and then we use it to the best ability. We don't focus on, and I did. When I started, I was like, I need the fastest lens, I need the best gear. And I feel like maybe that was part of my, if I have the best equipment, I'll shoot better. And now that I understand how equipment works, it's not about the equipment, it's about creativity and capturing that moment. So I feel like I've moved past technical. I still appreciate it and understand it and try and always update what I know. But I've moved more into the creative realm and utilizing those skills more.
Yeah, I think it's also like women are just automatically a little bit more scared to have somebody jump down their throat if they're incorrect. Especially like on my end in terms of video, where we are a lot of what we do is technical education, or talking about new cameras that come out and such. And even I am still definitely like, I don't really want to touch too much of the intense technical side with sizes and dimensions and all this stuff, because it is like a cruel world out there where everybody's just ready to jump down your throat. And definitely it's still to this day where if you're a woman and you kind of maybe there's something that's up for debate and everybody wants to debate against you, now you're known as that person who got it incorrect, and there's really no coming back from that, and you're the person that got it wrong, as opposed to other men who are just going to be unapologetic. If they're wrong, and you kind of deal with it, and everybody forgets about it. And for us, I feel like, one, because we are naturally more emotional, where that might like kind of kick us down, like, oh, now everybody thinks I'm wrong, now I can't get back to it, as opposed to a guy who might just be like, well, whatever, I don't care what they said, and they just kind of go back to it and shamelessly go back and talk more about technical, which is something we can definitely work on as women as a whole, of just being unapologetic and really just saying, if I make a mistake, who cares? But we are definitely afraid of being known for that mistake, that one time that we made. So I think it's a lot of that too, where people are afraid to be wrong, at least for on the video side, for sure.
Yeah, maybe it's a little bit, it's a privilege. Male privilege is there. So I think they're just maybe a little less worried about things like that. What you're saying. because they feel stronger already, that they're not going to be looked down upon so easily, so readily. And for me, having taught photography for years now, I really had to keep up with the technology. And so, with each new version of software that would come out, there'd be a tutorial. So I would just take it on and learn how to do new things. And the other side of that too is that necessity is the mother of invention. And so, how we all have gone through this situation where you have a photograph and you're trying to do something with it, and it's like, well, how do I do that? And you look it up and you figure out how that's done. And then just the idea of appearing, you were saying earlier, appearing small and not intimidating, and using that. Just a couple days ago, I read something that was, I don't know who said it. It came from the East, but it was, appear when you're strong, appear weak. When you're weak, appear strong. So maybe that's some advice to think about.
Definitely. So we're going to close it out with the last question of the night. What would you say to young women out there who are interested in pursuing a career in photography?
How much more time do we have left? Yeah. One thing I would definitely say, if you want to pursue a career in photography and run a business, is learn business first. A lot of people love photography. They get into photography, then they realize they have a business because people are like, oh, I love your work. Can you photograph this? Can you photograph that? And then you have a business before you even know it, and you really don't know how to run a business, price for profit. The creativeness and the technical side of photography will grow with your career, but to have a really good business foundation and to understand pricing and marketing and selling your work is probably the most important thing in being successful in a career. If you're doing what a lot of us are talking about, portrait work, wedding work, even, fashion, street photography is different, stock photography is different, but you really have to learn how to sell your work. Otherwise, you're not going to have a career. So that's what I would say. Get a mentor, learn everything you can about business, and then you can grow your photography.
Great advice. I would totally agree with you on that. And then I'd also say, find someone's work, like a mentor, or someone that you can assist and learn under, because I feel like there's nothing more powerful than working with somebody whose work you admire, but also to see how they do it. And then to really understand what it's like to be a photographer. Like, everyone thinks it's a glamorous job, but like Michele said, a lot of it is doing the business end. So if you learn that, you're going to be working like lots of hours into the night, and that you're not going to have much of a social life because a lot of your events happen on the weekend, and like that you're going to be spending a lot of time away from your friends and family, but also you're going to be doing what you love and creating amazing images, you have to kind of weigh out the pros and cons and see if it's really meant for you. So by working with a mentor, assisting, or even second shooting, you really learn that this is the right field for me or not.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing I would really add, I mean, you guys kind of already touched on it, is find a mentor you really can trust, whether it be male or female. And if you feel more comfortable, like, luckily now we do have the tools with Instagram and being able to really find a lot of photographers out there. Finding someone who you really are comfortable with asking questions. I think the one thing I really wish I would have had was somebody in confidence in terms of just asking random questions. Like, when I was starting out, like a long time ago, I didn't know what an f-stop was, and I was on a set and I didn't know what it was, and I felt so like I was just like, oh my God, like, but I had nobody to really ask or have a mentor to really talk about certain questions or have somebody explain something to me. And I think I would have loved to have that type of person who I could just ask any question, no question was dumb, and not be looked down upon for it. And I think it definitely, that's something that I try to do now, especially when people are just randomly asking, because I work at B&H, they ask me like, what camera should they buy? Like, I have family and friends. And I always kind of tell them, like, please ask me when you really want to learn how to use this camera. Like, I will give you the ins and outs on how to use this camera, what a shutter speed is, and because I really want you to know and know how to use it and not be stuck and then never use your camera because you don't know how to use it on manual. So definitely find somebody who you can have some confidence with.
Yeah, everybody's saying such good things, all of you. And having confidence. I think that confidence might be something that's lacking in a lot of people. I think maybe all of us have felt that. I'm sure we all have. I know I have. And especially when you're younger and less experienced. And so I would advise everyone to aim for the stars, when you're starting out, because you aim low, you'll get low. I love the idea of the business and learning the ropes there. That's excellent advice too. I think it's wonderful, and things are very different now than they were when I was younger too. Like I was saying that there were so few artists and photographers. I mean, there were some, like I mentioned, Diane Arbus when I was talking about that, but there weren't very many. And I didn't have that notion that people who looked like me could be a successful photographer. I think we all need to see that and see other people, that other women are doing these things, and you can do that. I want to say too that things that I've been witness to, that in that in 1973 in this country, in America, women could not, in all 50 states, serve on a jury. Can you imagine? In 1974, you could not get a credit card in your name if you were married, which I also think is just astonishing, right? Then look at the opportunities that were cut off for people, women who could not go to an Ivy League school. Let's see, I actually put a notation of, so I had the years right, because it's just so astonishing, really, that this would be the case. But Harvard didn't accept women until 1977, and the worst of it is Columbia. Columbia did not accept women to that university until December 7th, 1981. Can you imagine? I was in college and I couldn't go there. So we have to really appreciate the fact that times have changed. Things are better. That there's a lot of invisible things that I think go on that we can't know all the time, what people are thinking and why things happen the way they do. But it is better, infinitely better than it used to be. So have hope, and and don't give up. Keep going.
Jessica, to your point, it's kind of interesting. And while everything's so much better, there really is so much more work to do. Just like a random fact, kind of talking about these things that you're talking about. I'm currently refinancing my apartment, and my husband's also refinancing his own apartment. And I have to, when I close, he has to come with me and sign, even though he's not on the title, just to acknowledge our marriage certificate. He closed on his. I didn't have to show up. I didn't even have to be acknowledged, nothing. So I was just like, this is crazy that this is still happening, and it must be a really old law. I don't know. But it just kind of goes to show, like, why the things that we are doing, why a panel like this really is so important. And when some people say, like, oh, like a lot of younger men now are like, I don't think any of this is necessary, everything's fine, everything's great. Like, it's not great. Like, there's a reason why you are still doing these things, even though it is way better, and why we still continue to do this type of stuff.
Right. It wasn't until well, I won't tell you the year yet. Women could not obtain health insurance at the same monetary level as men. Drum roll, 2010. Until 2010. Can you imagine? So no, there is absolutely a need. I think what happens is that people get complacent, because if you didn't have to fight to vote, my grandmother couldn't vote in this country. She could not vote. So we really look at the real history. Your eyes can be opened. But yeah, there's still quite a battle ahead, and we have to plunge forward and take a look at the laws that sometimes we're not aware of, like that signature, that you just mentioned too. Wow.
that crazy?
Oh, I go ballistic. I really.
Oh my God. I was like fuming. I was like, oh
I can
my
only
God.
imagine.
Oh yeah.
What type of rally can I start over this? This is crazy.
I remember when we signed on our house, my husband and I noticed that every single time they'd always put his name 1st,
Mhm.
or his name was on all these things. And I said, listen, I'm the other half of this. And in
Mhm.
fact, it's absolutely equal here. Why are you only, and they would refer to him, always. And
Mhm.
if you ever noticed this too, this is what I've noticed. Let me tell you, is that sometimes I'm there to conduct some kind of business, right? And I'll have a friend with me, a man or somebody, whether they're a friend or not, there's a male accompanying me. And I notice the person I'm talking to, especially men, will always make eye contact with the man instead of at me. And I likewise try to be very conscious of not doing that.
Mhm.
When I'm talking to people, I try to make sure that I'm looking and making eye contact with everyone and showing respect, because you know what? How do we make a better world? We make a better world when everyone is allowed to be the best they can be, right? Of course, no matter what color you are, or your what male, female, whatever. Our This is that invisible part too, I think, is that if women and people of color and all the situations where people have not been allowed to be the best they can be, it's invisible. We can't see um, the ramifications of that. Maybe we would have cures for cancer and heart disease and lots of things that we have right now if everyone had been able to go to the schools that they wanted to and were respected. Because I think that injustice like this, these are the things that make life miserable.
Mhm.
Injustice is definitely one of them. And greed and lack of empathy too. I think that is another problem in our world that I guess that you want to change the world, you have to change yourself. That's about the only thing that we can do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like as artists, we can kind of make the tiny little change that may make somewhat of an impact in terms of just like how you choose your subjects. And when I shoot a video, maybe it's just like we did a video showcasing a camera, and we wanted to do on it was a sports camera, so we wanted to showcase some sort of athletic thing happening, and we decided to choose boxing. And if it didn't matter, so I was like, well, make it women boxers. Why can't it be them? Like, if it doesn't matter. So I think those types of like small things where somebody, you never know, like there could be a young woman who sees that video and is like, whoa, a female boxer, that's so cool. And like, it just kind of grabs their attention differently. And I think that's kind of the types of things artists can, and male artists can also be making that type of choice in terms of who are their subjects. If it doesn't matter, maybe sometimes choose a woman rather than always choosing a man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women need to support women, not compete with each other. We really, as women, should be 100% supporting each other, lifting each other up, being there for each other, not competing, where there's no competition. There's plenty of work for everyone. Everyone has different styles. There's enough in the universe to go around. We don't have to hoard or compete. We just have to give and commune and lift up. And that is the way the world gets better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Agreed.
I literally have goosebumps right now. So I'm feeling so inspired by this panel. I'm going to have to talk to David about doing a women's event, David. So definitely it all starts here, and that's what's important. So I really, really appreciate you guys coming on and taking the time to chat and tell us about some personal experiences. So thank you guys so much. And I look forward to doing more work like this in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.